Good morning, welcome to Catch and Release. My name's Lee Power. Rigs is on the agenda today. I'm just going to talk through a couple of the rigs that I use the most. I'm not going to dissect them and tell you how to tie them or go on about the components being used in them. I just thought I'd take this opportunity to give you an insight into the thinking behind the mechanics of the rigs that I use. There's 1,000,001 videos out there of how to tie chod and how to tie combi link and different hook patterns and all stuff like that, so I'm not going to bore you with more than that. But one thing that I've noticed doesn't really get much attention on these videos is how the hook and the hook bait goes into the fish's mouth. Obviously we've got the palm test to check the aggression of the hook turning when the hook link goes tight and in contact with the lead, but certainly something that I've never seen mentioned, and that's how the hook and the hook bait is acting as it goes into the fish's mouth, which can be the difference between a hook pull and a landed fish. So we'll take a quick look at just a basic combi link for a couple of different presentations and a stiff hinge link. Okay, so first off is the ever faithful combi link. This is just with a coated braid that's stripped back at the end, so nothing complicated. A link loop at the end, you can have a loop knot or tie it straight to the swivel. So you've got a soft coated braid and then it's stripped back from the hook. I've got a short piece of shrink tubing that's yet to be steamed, that's on a knotless knot to a curved shank hook, yet to be baited up. So for a bottom bait presentation using this rig, I would use a piece of silicone or a rig ring, probably about there, somewhere between the microbarb and the point of the hook. The reason behind that, with the bait being heavy, as it's lifted up into the fish's mouth, the hook actually is pinned to it, so the hook lifts with the bait, and then obviously the weight of the bait when it drops in the mouth, it's pulling that hook down into the bottom lip. Obviously, one thing I pay massive attention to with rigs, the fish isn't always going to come from this side. It could be coming from your line, it could be coming from the side. So the stripped back part forms a hinge, allowing the hook to flip like that. I'd also, on a bottom bait, use a piece of putter just where the coating starts, so the bait will be lifted up with the hook, easy to go into the mouth. There's no way the hook can foul on the way in, and then as the weight of the boilie comes into play, and obviously the weight of the putty on the hook link, that will actually try and do that if obviously this side is inside the fish's mouth. So that's a combi link for a bottom bait. Now if I was using it for a critically balanced bait, obviously I'd go for a KD style whipping. So the hair will exit more aggressively than that. I'm just using this rig for illustration purposes, but whilst hanging, the hook will try and sit like that, and then obviously as it's taken into the fish's mouth, what you're relying on is the bend of the hook. If I can just show you that from a better angle. So if this is the fish's bottom lip, the bend of the hook is actually like rolling over and then in, and obviously the buoyancy of the bait is letting the point of that hook hang down. With regard to the putter, I'd move it back to the centre of the hook link, because with a KD rig you're relying on the buoyancy of the bait, so you're trying to make the eye of the hook light to make the point heavier, and if you've got your putty too close, it's actually counteracting what you're trying to achieve. I'm not saying it doesn't catch fish, because it does everywhere, but if your putty's pulling the eye of the hook back down as you're trying to make it light, you end up with the hook wanting to go in the mouth like that. And I think with that extra weight on the eye, it can almost enough to give the fish warning that there's a problem and eject the bait before the hook's actually in the mouth. Another big point to mention on a KD rig, it is absolutely paramount that the hair is coming off the back of the hook. If it's slightly to one side, what tends to happen is on entry, really hard to show you this, but if I try and, probably better trying to go, that's alright. So if the hook's sitting on the piss like that, as it goes in, you can hook the fish on the way in, and obviously you're going to get a really shallow hook hold, prone to hook pulls, and you might not know what's going wrong for you. A recent discussion that we had at in the office at Catch was the Fang Twister being used for the KD rig. Now my personal preference for that rig, I think it's a rig ring hook, and that is it, because of it's so prone to doing that, and the hook like flipping onto its side and hooking on the way in rather than actually getting in and then nestling down. So I think there's a couple of us that share the view of the Fang Twister being an out and out rig ring hook, and there's a couple of lads that won't use a different hook for a KD rig. So slightly horses for courses, but that's fishing. So I think that's the ever faithful combi rig dissected. Obviously with a bottom bait it might pay you to use the stiffer coated material, just if it gets kicked up by a bit of turbulence caused by the fish or ejected for whatever reason. If it's a heavy bottom bait and a soft coating like this, you can end up with your rig landing like that. So if you've got a stiff material, or if you're tying a combi link the old fashioned way with a stiffer boom, then you know that the only part that's really going to move around is the uncoated braid section. Whereas if you've got a semi-buoyant bait, a balanced bait, there's every chance that the strength of this soft coating will actually reset itself, unless it's, you know, forced. But anyway, that's the combi link. So just think about, I mean, it's dead simple to do, just using the hair, decide what bait's going on there, and either attach it to the shank if it's a bottom bait, or a KD, or, you know, that's just a knotless knot. That hook's hanging enough for me on a critically balanced bait for me to be happy that once it's in the fish's mouth, it's going to be hanging down ready for the bottom lip. But yeah, just do your palm test, but just see how that hook is going to react when it's taken into the fish's mouth using your finger as an imitation bottom lip, if you like. So that's that one. So next up, the stiff hinge rig. So that's the stiff hinge rig in its varying forms. You've got the option of using a supple boom, a coated boom, a stiff boom. I think the stiffer you can get away with, the more efficient of a rig it is. But you need to be sure that the lake bed that you're presenting that rig over is free of obstacles, otherwise it could end up sticking up. Or obviously if you've got quite thick silt as well and the lead's burying, you can take some of the hook link down as well with it. So this variation is just a coated braid boom with a chod section. Now this rig and the chod rig, the hooking on these are probably the best hook holds you're going to get from any rig, because obviously as soon as, again with the bottom lick finger, as soon as that rig's sucked in, it's turning, and the weight of the putter, I tend to overweight mine just to give it a bit more of that effect, but as it goes in the mouth, the hook actually goes lower in the mouth as it goes further in because of that curve and the weight of that part. So that's the stiff hinge. And then I do quite a lot of fishing using this particular rig as a critically balanced bottom bait rig. And again, if the fish comes from, if I just lay that towards me, so the rod's coming from me, the rig's laid out, I'm not sure if you can see it properly, but that's on the deck as a bottom bait. If the fish comes from anywhere my side of this ring, my side of the bait, as the rig's lifted and sucked in, the hook's already facing the right way, so the hook's already going into that bottom lip. And if the fish is coming from the far side of the rig, it just flips and turns every time. So I use the stiff hinge rig or a variation of this rig for critically balanced bottom baits. I don't know, as much as I use combi links. So that's 2 presentations for the stiff hinge rig, 2 presentations for the combi rig. And again, resetting wise, you know, it's almost a foolproof rig. As long as your bait's buoyant and it's going to stay up for the duration, if that's the what you're trying to achieve. Obviously the more critically balanced it is on a soft coated boom, the less likely it is to end up like that from being ejected, whereas a stiff boom, you can probably get away with a bit more putter, which, like I stated a minute ago, certainly aids, it almost makes the rig part, if you imagine the putties acting as a small lead, that's your pivot for this rig, with the added bonus that, you know, it has got a bit of movement anyway, but this rig flies back in fish's mouths. So that's that one. Yeah, like I say, just something that's never been mentioned, or I've never seen it mentioned. It must get thought about by people, but I've never seen it put down on video. So just be conscious of what the hook's actually doing when the fish is taking the bait in. Obviously it'll tune you into the mechanics of the rig more so, and hopefully get you less lost fish and more bites. So thanks for watching, see you next time.